G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to my round 3 review. A pretty solid week for me again, 2 weeks on the trot with a 2300 plus score. That ranking's starting to come right in now. Find myself at 1604 as an overall rank and the round rank was just outside the top 1k. So starting to hit form and things are certainly looking up after a really poor round 1 as I said. The week in general started super well for me. I ended up going down to Marvel Stadium with my brother and my best mate to watch the Pies versus Lions, and I tell you what, the football karma train came back and delivered. Zach the Rat Bailey winning goal after the siren, and I tell you what, the scenes were absolutely amazing. There's not much of a better feeling than beating Collingwood by a point after the siren, particularly after a really down week last week at the Cattery where the umpires absolutely robbed us. And the other great thing about the game was that unbelievably I ran into about 5 or 6 different people in groups of people that were all big fans of the channel. So shout out to Ari. Right boys, here at the game with my man Ari, just went up, so we're 2 points down at the moment. Let's go Lions! Let's go Lions! Let's go, boys! And there was also Marcus, Harry, Sam, Benny, and the big group of blokes at Hungry Jack's at the end of the game. Sorry, as you know, fellas, I had a few beverages in the system by then, but we did cause a little bit of mischief there at Hungry Jack's. But yeah, really good fun and great scenes after the game. So thanks very much to all the blokes that did come up and say g'day. If you ever do see me out and about, please come up and say hi, and it'd be really good to meet you in person. But let's get into this round review. As I said, not too bad. Now, I'll try to get through this pretty quickly, given the fact we've got a really short turnaround this week, and I want to get straight into the stock market video. But Jake Lloyd, our main man in defence, a 116 after a really nice score last week. Still a wonderful starting pick in my opinion. Look, I don't think he's going to get to that 125 average that he showed us last year. But again, I don't think there's going to be a heap of players that are able to maintain their 2020 average, to be quite honest. Jordan Ridley, he was my trade-in for this week, and what a magnificent trade-in he was. I did mention in the stock market video last week that I thought this guy is an absolute must-have in our backlines. You know, takes every one of the kick-outs, plays on 99% of the time, hits a target probably 90% of the time, and rarely wastes a disposal. You know, he's their main man. He's the general in the Essendon defence now, and what I was really pleased about was the fact that the ball didn't spend near as much time in the Essendon defence as what I predicted pre-game. Essendon wiped St Kilda off the park this week, and Ridley still managed to almost pump out a 150 score. So if you haven't got Jordan Ridley in your side, I think he may start to cause you some real problems soon, and you need to get him in sooner rather than later. Tommy Stewart, again, subpar 100 score, but 94 isn't the worst score in the world, and he's got a really low floor. He'll be hovering between 90 to 120 most weeks, I think, for a round score. Jaden Short, you will not see this bloke use the ball as badly as what he did on the weekend. Look, I think a lot of that was due to Sydney's wonderful pressure, and most of the Richmond side was off. But if an 88's going to be one of his worst scores, then I'll take that as well, and not really worried about Jaden Short whatsoever. Jordan Clark, I should have mentioned when I talked about Stewart, sorry. I only watched half of the match because it was my niece's 2nd birthday, so happy birthday, Everly. Love you lots, darling. He had a really poor first half. I think he was on about 25 at half time and was looking like an absolute disaster, another train wreck. But he managed to obviously have a pretty decent second half. I did hear that he kicked a goal, a pretty crucial goal, which is always handy for a player's score. But what were we expecting with someone like a Jordan Clark? He's 72 average at the moment. I think if you were hoping for an 85 plus average, it was probably asking for a little bit too much. But if he can get to 75, 80 for an average, I'll be okay with that, I suppose. Not the best result, but probably a realistic result, I think, at this stage. Tommy Highmore, wasn't this an absolute shock that he got omitted? I think it was more for team balance, as opposed to the fact that they didn't rate his game last week. But this was a bit of a blessing in disguise for me. My emergency was Jordan Butts, and he scored a 95. I did mention again last week that he was that real emergency type player, someone who I'm not rapt to have to start on field if I do have to, but that worked out absolutely swimmingly. Now, this is a reason why I paid up for that extra job security, because we saw Highmore get dropped, Harry Sharp got dropped, and I expected that, to be quite honest, because he's only a young fella. He's got to focus on his schooling and had a pretty poor week last week. So I'm wrapped now that I did pay up for Butts, and he's managed to make some good money. And with that 95 in his system, the next couple of weeks, he'll make some decent coin as well. The question from now on is, if Highmore is selected, who do I field? Is it Butts or is it Highmore? I may be able to use a little bit of DPP with that, but that's going to be a bit of a tough decision going forward, I think. Cozzy, a terrible game from him. O'Brien's got to come in, I think. He was terrible under pressure, fumbly, made some crucial mistakes in crucial moments, and I just don't see how he plays again next week. I'm not sure on that, but with the 22, zero impact on the game, I don't see how Clarko stays with him, to be quite honest. In the midfield, you'll notice that Lachie Neale is now gone. That was the only decision that you could make. Given the fact he was under a bit of an injury cloud pre-game, he was going down in price. That was an absolute guarantee. It was the week last week to get rid of Lachie Neale. I've heard a little bit of a whisper as well that he may not even be playing this week against the Dogs, which is a little bit scary for Brisbane Lions supporters. But again, it is only a whisper, but don't be shocked to see Lachie Neale have a bit of a rest this week and maybe for the next couple of weeks as well. We'll just have to see about that. But these two blokes here, you couldn't believe I got a 2,300 plus score when Oliver scores a 67 and Mitchell scores an 89. Now, what was the reason for those low scores? They both copped a really, really hard tag. Oliver, particularly in the first half. My wife actually kicked me out of the lounge room because I was getting a little bit emotional with De Boer's hard tag on Piggy. He was on 10 points at half time. This is Clayton Oliver, the fantasy pig, 10 points at half time. Now, I must admit something that I'm not overly proud of. I did make a little prayer to the SuperCoach gods at half time and asked them just to take De Boer out of the game for me so that Piggy could get just a 50 or a 60. And they helped me out a little bit. So apologies to Matty De Boer. I never wish injury on anyone, but I must admit, he was just doing my head in, De Boer, and he's such a good tagger. Oliver was pretty lucky to get to that 67 in the end. If Matty didn't do his hamstring, that could have been a 30-odd score, which would have been an absolute disaster. 67 is pretty disastrous in regards to his price cycle, but look, if you come up against De Boer, you can't expect a real great premium score. Mitchell, he copped the Mark O'Connor tag, similar to Lachie Neale last week, and I think O'Connor's done a really good job. I know in the first quarter, he was the leading fantasy points winner. I think he was on 40-odd at quarter time, and Mitchell, I think, was on about 5 points. But obviously the second half, he came right back. I know that Mitchell had a really good second quarter as well and ended up on about 44, I think it was, at half time. Didn't watch the end of the match, but to get to an 89, yeah, I suppose he had a decent second half. Zach Merritt, we were a little bit worried about him, weren't we, the first couple of weeks, but he looked really good for 115. Looked like he had that motivation back, that energy back, and he was big part of the reason why Essendon had a really good match, I think. Just looked really good for me, Merritt. We know that he can rack up the pill, but the urgency for me was there this week, and that's what I really liked about Merritt's game. Rory Laird, 95. Again, below par from him, but it's not a disaster. Again, we know that his lowest score in the last 3 years was a 72, so he's not going to give you too many of those 70 to 75, 80 type games. 90 to 95, I think, is going to be his absolute fall this year. So, again, no concerns there with Rory Laird, but you do want a little bit more. Errol, he couldn't maintain that rage of 130-plus average. We can't complain, though, with the 74. This is a more realistic score, I think, from Goulden after his first two games, and we certainly can't complain with that 116 average. I'm still going to take a 74 from him every day of the week. James Jordan, this bloke was ripped off, I think, by Champion Data. He scored a nice goal in the second half. Well, when I say a nice goal, it was a nice kick from, I think, about 45 out, pretty much straight in front, maybe 45-degree angle. But he didn't end up scoring any points for that. He was on 57 and got scaled back all the way to 49. And for me, that was a better game than a 49. But most of us have him. Most of us had him on field, so we all copped that 49. But disappointing, not necessarily from Jordan, but disappointing in the way that he was scored, I think. Sam Berry, 58. Again, can't complain too much. It was a little bit of the opposite for Berry this week. In the first couple of weeks, he had a really good first half and then tapered off the second half. But this week, he had a really poor first half and a pretty decent second half. I remember one thing I was spewing about is that He made a really nice tackle in the inside 50, got a holding the ball decision, would have gone back for a pretty easy goal. And when I say pretty easy, remember Berry did score 4 behinds last week. But bloody, who was it? Ned McHenry, I think, took the advantage on him. And I was absolutely spewing with McHenry. But that could have been a 65-70 if he had to kick that goal. But again, 58, I'm not going to complain too much from a rookie. Fife, he was my loophole. Ended up managing to get Grundy's VC score, which was really, really handy. Had Power come in for that 49. Brockman, really disappointing. Look, does Clarko keep the faith with him? I'm not too sure, but I know on half-time or midway through the second quarter, he was on -2. So if you had have fielded him, you're actually losing points at that stage. But obviously brought it back a little bit in the end with a 29, but really disappointing. He's been a bit of a yo-yo, really poor. Then a 77 last week, really poor again. Does he come back next week if he's selected? Possibly, but I certainly wouldn't be looking to have him starting on field. Scott, good with a 65. Some of us were worried that he might even get dropped this week. So from 102k rookie with DPP, a 65 with a 48 average isn't anything to worry about, I don't think. And I'm pretty happy with that, to be quite honest. Another thing I'm really happy about is my set and forget ruck. So this was the only way that I was going this year. A little bit concerned after round 1, but after rounds 2 and 3, yes, absolutely wrapped. So Big Brody, he was a really obvious VC choice for me this week, given the fact that the Big O was down. Interesting to note as well that the Brisbane's midfield coach, Dale Tapping, did a fair bit of work with our midfield group during the week, predicting that Grundy was going to dominate the hit-out. So that actually worked out really well for Brisbane, and I think we actually won the clearance count, which was quite amazing. Max Gawn, again, he was coming up against Matty Flynn, and Flynn with an 89, I think that's a really, really good score against Max Gawn. And if he's going close to a 90 against someone of the quality of Max Gawn, then when he comes up against some less abled ruckmen, then he could definitely go over 100. So if you've started him on field and you haven't gone with the set and forget, then that's still not the worst decision in the world, but you are missing out on those huge captaincy scores. And no one else in my team got close to the 2 big boys in the ruck this week. So wrapped with this set and forget rucks, yeah, if you haven't got them at this stage, you've got Flynn. Yeah, you'll eventually be able to upgrade to them, but it's still going to take a lot of time, I think. In the forward line, Josh Dunkley, again, a must-have, a 132. He was a no-brainer selection at the start of the year. You've just got to get this bloke in your side ASAP. Dusty, he was my other trade-in this week for the butcher, Tom Phillips, and he did what I was worried that he would do, and that's just play a pretty average game. Again, he did cop a fair bit of attention. And an 85, look, it isn't the end of the world. Again, I've mentioned it a couple of times with other players, but given the fact he started with the 160 or 120, looked like he was in Brownlow form, I thought he's an absolute must-have. I've just got to get this bloke in, go with the crowd, over 65%. And of course, he rewards me with an 85 first off, which was why I didn't select him at the start of the year, due to these sort of scores that he does pump out from time to time. But after the belting that Richmond got last week, I'm expecting a huge response from them, and I think Dusty will be a big part of that. So I can't even talk. It's getting late at the moment. I'll try to get through the rest of this without stumbling too much. Jack Zeeble, oh, look, he could be a keeper. There's a high chance that this bloke could be a keeper. We know he's not the best defender, but that doesn't worry us if he's pumping out 155 scores. Look, it would worry you if you're a North supporter, but as a SuperCoach owner, I'm absolutely wrapped with this bloke. And a 113 average, I don't think there's any reason at this stage why we can't be predicting him to be a keeper. You know, someone like a side bottom, he's been extremely disappointing, as have a couple of other premiums up there. But Zach, I've done it again. I can't talk. Jack Zeeble has played extremely well in the first 3 rounds. And remember, last week he was injured as well, so that 70-odd score could have been closer to an 80, 90 even. Jarman Impey, keeper quality, again, possibly, because he's got that awesome roll down back, and he's not a rookie. Remember, he was at a rookie-type price, a high rookie-type price, but this guy's a really talented player. I think Hawthorn gave up a fair draft pick for him to bring him across from Port Adelaide. He's super exciting, has a lot of energy, is really impacting the game. They're getting the ball in his hands, and he's using the ball really, really well. Using his pace out of the back line as well. A couple of running bounces I noticed today, and super stoked with Impey as a selection. Do you bring him in if you haven't already got him? I'll talk about that in the stock market video. Campbell, well, at 29, I think most of us would have had him on field. After last week with that 118, I don't think any coaches would have been benching him, unless for some reason your particular line that you've got Campbell on currently is just stacked full of premiums. But, I can cop that from him after a big score last week. But again, I think we can't get too excited with this pick. If he can go around that average, 67 to maybe a 70, I'll still be pretty happy with that, I think. Chad Warner, just what do you say about this guy? I just love having this bloke in my SuperCoach team. He's damaging, he's exciting, he's getting a fair few CBAs, and he just races out with the ball there. Impacted the scoreboard a couple of times. How's that running goal from the centre? Absolutely sublime. So Chad Warner is fast becoming one of my favourite players in the AFL, to be quite honest. And if you haven't got him, I think most coaches do. But if you didn't get him last week, that was a huge blunder on your behalf. And I will talk a bit more in the stocky about what to do with Chad Warner if you don't currently have him. Paddy Dow. Now, Patchy, who I love listening to from Jock Reynolds. G'day, Patchy. One of his favourite sayings is that this bloke, or not Paddy Dow in particular, but he does refer to blokes not being good football players or being good football players. And I should have realised that Paddy Dow is not good at football. I looked too closely at the role and focused a little bit too much on that BOG performance in a bloody practice match. But he's definitely a failed pick. Extremely disappointing. From a Carlton supporter's point of view, you gave pick 3 for this bloke, or you used pick 3 on this bloke, and he just has not delivered. He's got time to deliver, but I just don't think he's got the skills to be able to do it. Good with his hands, but terrible with his feet, as I've mentioned the first couple of weeks already. And James Rowe, a 40-odd score. When you're looking at some of the other scores that were pumped out by rookies this week, like your Brockmans, your Campbells and your Dows, it wasn't actually that bad, but I still don't think that Rowe is an on-field option. He's definitely a bench option, and that's why I like my structure in the forward line, because I don't have to play someone like a Rowe or even a Dow. I can rely on those two big premiums up there, the two blokes in Zeeble and Impey that are those sort of high rookie price that are scoring like premiums at the moment. Campbell, I said, I think he'll bounce back for about a 75 average for the season, and Warner as well. I already mentioned how much I have so much love for Mr. Chad Warner. But that is the team at the moment, guys. Now, trades for me for this week will be 0, hopefully. I don't have any injuries that I need to worry about. I'm really tempted to move Dow on, but I think my plan for Dow is to look to move him on after next week, when Waterman may possibly be on the bubble. So that's a plan for me. I'm not going to hold on to Dow for too much longer. I'm just going to cash him in while I can. Will he lose money next week? Probably, but I don't think it's going to be too much money. But again, I'm hoping he doesn't get a 27-odd score. I'm hoping that can be at least a 50+, but we can't expect much more from a Paddy Dow. I think he's just not a very good player, as I said. But that is the team for this week, as I said, guys. I hope you had an awesome round. Let me know how you went. Thanks again for those blokes that I did see at the footy. Wrap to meet you guys, and I will be out again, hopefully tomorrow afternoon rather than tomorrow night with the stock market video. I've got a little bit of time up my sleeve at the moment, given I'm a teacher and I'm on school holidays, so I will try to pump out some extra content during the next couple of weeks. And until then, take care, guys, and I'll see you soon in the stocky.